our zoning code, because we have our own town zoning, we can amend it to state that before we go out and do a fence viewing, we would require that the two landowners both know that where the boundary lines are. And we just spent an awful lot of time running around looking at fences, and nobody ever knew where the boundary lines were. And when surveys were done, you just could not believe where the boundary lines were. They were anywhere but near what anybody thought they were.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so a lot of dollars expended because one person says, well, we're gonna do this.
Right, okay.
And so make it fair to everyone, if everybody's on the same page, it could be a lot fairer.
Gotcha.
And
So that sounds like it could be a solution. Yeah.
Yeah, and townships don't realize that they can amend that. And so it takes a long time before you can, well, it's been close to 3 years now. And, well, that email is 2016.
Right.
That I found out and, tried to let everybody know. But I'm a farmer. I farm right across Highway 16. I've went through the experience as John Schmidt did, and there's a lot of, what I get is you can't call, the legal authorities because we don't dispute boundaries. Nobody disputes boundaries. So by amending the law and saying, you have to come here, if you want to do the Wisconsin 90 statute, there has to be a survey, a certified survey done, and then amend it so that they can't utilize and take advantage of it, which is happening a lot with certain people in the area.
Gotcha.
Okay?
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
Okay.
Are we allowed to ask questions on that?
Sure, yeah. Go ahead.
Is this a statute where that if I have a land, you have to pay half, as the landowner, you have to pay for half the fence?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Because, that's a huge issue, and some people don't want to pony up for it.
I'd show you my checkbook. It's
Oh, yeah.
huge.
It's even an issue in cities as
Oh, yeah.
well. There was an argument
Yeah.
that in Watertown where a fence went up and the person who wanted the fence to keep his neighbor's pig farm out built it backwards. In other words, had the posts on the outside so he didn't have to look at it. And Watertown was asked to come in and be the fence master. And it got much deeper, and actually, if you mentioned it's one of the oldest, it's actually, the history of it is fascinating. It goes back to England, and that person was pretty much second to the king, the person who controlled the power. And it's, which some municipalities don't want that authority anymore, some towns don't want the authority anymore, because it divides neighbors and divides, so it is something that perhaps may need to be revisited, but it is such an ancient statute, so.
Okay. Thanks
Very
very
good.
much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Alan Coles, Reesville?
Yeah, I was on gas tax, but you kind of answered that, and I was thinking that, sales tax on cars or whatever, because I'm completely against raising the gas tax, because we are now number 19 in the nation, and we've been in the top 10, and if you raise the gas tax, we'll be back in the top 10 in the United States. And even in the Midwest, we'll be ahead of Minnesota, even Illinois will be just behind us. We don't, gas tax to me, because in a few more years, you're gonna have to raise it again.
Well, those opposed to a gas tax increase may see the only bright side right now is they fill up and the gas is skyrocketed. So as that continues to go up, there's more ammunition to fight any increase of that, certainly of the size the governor proposed.
How come you guys got money to build a road, but you got no money to repair the roads? I mean, the gas tax, everybody uses the highway, and they're the ones that should pay for it. The trucking industry, I met with Schneider, I met with a number of different trucking companies, they're all for it. Because they're gonna add it on to the product that they deliver down the road and the consumer buys it. So in a roundabout way, everybody's paying for that gas tax. Toll roads, you gotta start a whole new organization, spend millions and millions of dollars to get these toll roads set up, when you ain't got any money to fix the roads you got. And that's why we're here from the highway department. There's enough of us here that would like to come unglued, but
it's gotta be taken care of. We got so many people complaining about roads, and there's nothing happening. Couple of years ago, we all wore buttons, fix it, you know? And I'll tell you one thing, Walker would still be in if he would take care of his small town people.
Well, tolling raises billions, not millions, billions.
And it's not a dying industry like the gas tax.
And it is an evolving industry as well. I mean, the old days of collecting coins is gone. And all you have to do is see how many people in southern Wisconsin have an iPass as they drive back and forth across. We can put, and we are, I mean, I think that this budget will probably put more money into local aids, just flat out. And that's what Governor Walker proposed, you know, about a year ago, I guess it was. So, I think that, you know, to some extent, it's gonna have to be a mix again on things that, that people, you gotta get the votes for. You gotta be able to say to people, we're gonna increase the registration by $10. We're gonna increase the title fee by X amount of dollars.
It's still all
And it's
boils
gonna be
down to fixing
significant.
the roads,
Well, yeah,
just in a roundabout way.
yeah, no, I get that. But my point is, and the gentleman's right. I mean, if you raise the gas tax by 8 cents now, you'd be a 10th in the nation, and if you allowed the indexing, it'd push you to number 3. So
Now,
Wisconsin,
everybody pays $5 for gas.
well, Wisconsin has a history of relying heavily on the gas tax, and, you know, 30% of that is paid by out-of-state travelers, which is why there's been a hesitation to go after registration fee. But, I mean, if you look at the list of where other states are, you know, you've got $270, $300 registration fees on vehicles, and you've got title fees as high as $250, but right now it's $69 in Wisconsin. You know, when you buy a vehicle or retitle, $69, you know? And, you know, how often do people buy a new vehicle? Typically 4 or 5 years. So, I mean, those are the types of things I think we're looking at right now to try and figure that out, so.
You talked about title and registration fees.
Yes, sir.
What about all the people from other states that come in here? Why can't they pay their fair share of using their roads too, instead of the state of Wisconsin paying for everything?
Well, that's what gas tax is, yeah,
That's what-
30%.
Well, I understand that, but you're
Yeah.
talking about title and registration. That does nothing for other state people. That's all us paying the.
That's why a mix is.
You're right about that.
That's why a
Yeah.
mix is important though, and that's why gas tax is part of it. We're not talking about getting rid of the gas tax, we're just, some of us are questioning whether or not we should keep putting all of our eggs or more of our eggs into the gas tax basket when that's a revenue stream that's fairly flat because cars are more fuel efficient, electric cars, hybrid cars, all of the investment at the car companies at Amazon are on electric cars and drones and other fuel sources. So eventually, we're gonna put ourselves in a bad spot where only those of us that drive old vehicles are paying more and more for gas tax, and other people that are driving alternative fuel sources are paying less and less. So that's why we're saying in these big discussions, what are other options? I mentioned some of them before, mileage fees, open road tolling. All of them have negatives. All of them have people, some of them that are here that hate the particular one for a particular reason. We get that, that's why these are tough, but that's also why it's not fixed overnight, and it's gonna continue to be, as the senator said, a mix of things to try to keep moving us forward, so we have what the gentleman that started this discussion is looking for, money to fix roads.
Yes, sir.
I just have a question on the projections that you're saying for the mix, because they said a lot of this stuff was built in the 40s and 50s where gas was cheap and.
And it was the only way people got around.
And that's the only way people got around, but now as the mixes changes, what are our projections for those, you know, the change from the gas and diesel to the electric and sources? Do we have any projections going in the next 20, 30 years?
I was at a conference,
Yeah.
Midwest Finance Leaders Conference last spring, and they had a couple of different national think tanks there presenting on just this issue. Most of the conference was on transportation because the feds, most of our federal money comes from federal gas tax. So when this starts to go, we're all in big trouble. Most of them felt that in the next 20 years, so 2 decades, we'd probably see half the revenue we have now, which is between the 30-some states that primarily fund their transportation through gas tax and the feds is billions and billions and billions of dollars.
Yeah, most, four-door sedans, smaller vehicles, I mean, I'm not telling anybody, it's just going in the wrong direction. The
Domino's
fuel
is
efficiency
delivering-
is there.
Domino's is delivering pizza in 2 states with driverless cars that are all electric. No gas tanks.
And we did try and address that in the last budget. We ran into a little bit, kind of a hiccup in the interpretation of what was signed into law by the governor. But we did address electric vehicles in the last budget, so.
And we'll try to fix it in this budget.
Yeah, and we'll try and fix the language and get it kind of right, but. Yes, sir, did you have a follow-up to something?
Yes, I do. I've heard that we're going to have something like a wheel tax proposed in this state where you pay registrations for the vehicle, plus you pay an added tax per wheel of the vehicle. And a bad example is a motorcycle versus a semi. The wheel tax on a motorcycle would only be $5, $10 compared to a semi, which would be X number of dollars depending on the wheels. Is this a possible solution?
Well, we know that in Dane County right now, when you get your registration, if you're in Dodge, you're paying $75 for a regular vehicle, but in Dane, it's $125. And that's because Dane County has put wheel tax in place. So it's another patchwork that's starting to develop as locals continue to put those wheel taxes in place, which is another thing I think for the legislature to consider as we kind of move forward on transportation. So, but the wheel tax at the local level is happening already, so, yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator. I just wanted to add a few additional comments to this whole conversation on transportation. My colleague, Mr. Mookie here, is very correct. Dodge County roads are in serious need of repair, and we need help from the state to infuse funds to repair them. In 2003, Dodge County's roads were at a PACER rating of 5 or above, 5 being average. Now they're 5 and below the majority of roads in Dodge County. So the need is critical. I agree with your comments. We need to have a blend of, motor fuel tax, registration fee increases. But please, and I'm gonna put on my other hat for a second, please don't put this on the backs of the trucking industry. The trucking industry moves so much goods, agricultural goods, everything in the state, and to put a 27% registration fee increase onto the trucking industry is just wrong. We need to spread this out over the entire motoring public. And please don't consider that ton-mile tax like Joint Finance was looking at last year, a 2.85 cents per ton-mile tax.
I'm sure she'll bring it back, but.
Yeah, they'll try, but please don't even go there. That really tantamount to a 20 cent a gallon motor fuel tax on a truck that gets 7 miles a gallon. Again, you gotta spread it out, you gotta make it fair. Some of the research I've been doing as far as open road tolling, the infrastructure cost and the continuing cost maybe does not make that as attractive an option as possible. It may be part of it. It's been fine for building new roads, but at least the information I have, these federal permits that have been available in 18 years since this program has been going, nobody's taken advantage of any of them for existing roads. So the 12 to 20% ongoing cost of administering and building toll roads, I'm not sure that's, it's got to be looked at a lot more closely before we just head down that road. At a listening session I attended with Representative Bourne, I had said, what about the sales tax? Other states have much higher sales tax. And his comment was there's no way to earmark sales tax revenue going into the transportation fund. Can't some legislation be enacted that would require a certain percentage of the sales tax to be earmarked for transportation, and then look at that as a way to spread this cost over?
I'll take it. See, yes, legislation can be enacted and then be changed by the next legislature. And that's what I was telling you. The Constitution protects the lockbox
So
on
it's
the
got to be a
transportation.
constitutional.
But if we do it now, we do 0.25% of GPR. The governor's requesting in his budget to stop that. We might put it back in, we could put it in for more, but then it's just the decision of this legislature, and the next one can change it, so it doesn't really help the fund overall, it's a one-time thing, and so that's the problem with using those.
Just off the top of my head, I think in the first year, there's about 42 million that'll be going directly from sales tax into the transportation fund. And then I think it's higher in the second year,
47, I think.
47. So it's we've already been doing it.
Already doing it.
But right now, that's
Yeah.
coming out in the governor's proposal, that 42 and 47 is coming out. And we'll have, if we decide to continue that, we'll have to put it back, we'll put it in our legislative document. And we could put it in more if we feel that that's the right way to spend we were talking about earlier, where the lottery money, that's all in that GPR pot, so maybe we grab some more out of there, and that's all part of the discussion.
I mean, I would just say on tolling one more time, the technology has changed so significantly in the last probably 4 or 5 years. HTMB, which is the corporation that implements tolling nationwide, is a Wisconsin corporation. They've got a presence here. So I've been through a couple of presentations there, and it's much different than what it has been in the past. And, again, I mean, I know that a lot of the trucking companies have already kind of positioned themselves that they're against paying tolls. They don't like that option. But I'm hesitant to take anything off the table until it's kind of fully explored and we see where we're at, so, yeah. Check, yes.
Yeah, I have to echo that comment, especially as far as putting the huge increase on the back of the truckers. For an example, there's a company called Hirschbach in Iowa, and they went to Richland and Beaver Dam and said, we'll take care of all your trucking. And they are doing so now. And that cut us on about 10 trucks.
Okay.
For an example, hauling 40,000, hauling 40 ton in Iowa, the registration fee is $1,695. In Wisconsin, it's $2,527. So we can't stand any more of that. And that affected us, Pine Hill,
Barnett.
Several of the truckers around here. Sure, we can find something else, but you got your traffic lanes all set up to go from one point to another, and now you have to change all that, and so it's, so I think it just
And I don't really know where the governor's numbers came on that. I don't know.
27, but the 27%.
Yeah, 27%.
Yeah, I don't know where,
that's
I don't know how he came up with his
Yeah,
numbers,
I was,
so,
I was
or what if, what he
meeting
was
with
trying
Greg
to
Thompson
achieve.
down at
Right.
Watertown, and
Yeah, very good. Brian Field, you want to jump in, Brian?
Yeah, please.
You're next on the list anyway.
Thank you. I guess first of all, I want to thank you for being here to listen to us and share your insight. I'm Brian Field, Dodge County Highway Commissioner. I'm representing Dodge County Highway today. But thank you for being here, and I'd like to thank you for your past support. I'd like to thank Representative Bourne. For a lot of people don't realize that we rely heavily on state and federal funding for our highway system. And in the first phase of the last bridge funding cycle, Dodge County applied for a number of bridges to be replaced, and we were going to receive no funding for any bridge replacement projects in the cycle. And after some hard work from Representative Bourne, we got 6 bridges funded for replacement. So thank you very much for your efforts. It's not easy, your jobs aren't easy at all. We recognize that, appreciate what you do. I can't stand here to tell you how to do your job. It's huge, it's very hard. What I can do, and what I'd like to do, and I'm giving you this document, and I'll pass these around for people to take a look at, is just kind of show the local problems that we're facing. And this document that I'm circulating, if you can share them or pass them on, just shows our report card for the county highway system in Dodge County. The graph on the left shows the condition of our roads back in 2003 on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being failed and 10 being brand new. And you can see the majority of the roads were in classification 5 and 6. They're average, they're in need of some maintenance, but they're holding their own doing pretty well. You can see in 2017, 14 years later, the overall condition of our roads has slid significantly to the left. Our highest single road condition today is condition 3. That's nearly failure. And that's not news to most of us. When you see it in this format, it's pretty shocking. We're in a tough spot. And these people know that. It's not news to them either. I think the missing link is education like this for the people that strike out every funding source. We have to pay for them. Striking out every funding source isn't an option. We need to pay for our roads. I applaud your effort to try to share that expense with all the people in the state, all the users of the system, whether in the state or not. I think education is maybe the missing link here. We need to educate people as to where we are, where we've been, and where we're headed. I think we need to try to establish short-term fixes to at least freeze this slide. And gas tax increase to some degree, some of these registration increases are probably very good short-term solutions. But obviously, we need a long-term sustainable funding source for Wisconsin. And I think that might be the tolling or the VMTs or a combination of those two. So like I said, I can't tell you how to do your job and what's the best choice to make, but I can ask you, what can we do as residents? What can we do as Wisconsin County Highway Association to help that education process? I think that's where this is breaking down. The responses you get are ignorant. They don't understand.
Brian, you and I have had many conversations about this too. I mean, in here, we get the concern about trucking. I go to another part of the district and they say, well, those are the big vehicles that are tearing up the roads. So they should pay a lot more. You know what I mean? It's like Jell-O right now, and that's why we're still, I think I have confidence in the folks in the Joint Finance Committee and the Assembly leadership that we'll get to a much better spot in the next couple months.
Can I add just a little bit to that?
Please say, don't say that I agree, that was were my comments, Jeff. But yes.
Thank you, and again, I thank you for being here. I spent 30 years on the Dodge County Highway Committee and 30 years on the county board, so I know your job is tough. But it's interesting when we talk about the trucks breaking up the roads. And I go back a long ways. I started trucking. I owned a company since 1947, started driving in 1940, or around 1944. But anyhow, about 1968 or 70, we were hauling 60,000, 62,000, and they said, well, you know, we need more money. We're going to add 10% to your transportation, your registration, but we're going to let you haul 2 extra 1,000 pounds. Okay, so that kept going. Then, and for last, now we're at 80,000 pounds, and in the meantime, we probably tripled or more than tripled our registration fees. We're at 80,000 pounds, same roads. They didn't build the roads any better, so it's not the trucker's fault.
Sure.
We're hauling exactly what you, or less, and you tell us we can haul 80,000 pounds. So the reason we're breaking up the roads is because you didn't build roads to stand the weight that you said we could haul.
Yeah.
You understand that?
I do. I do.
So, like I say, so I get a little tighter in the collar when somebody says we're breaking up the roads. We're doing exactly what you said we can do, no more, no less.
Gotcha.
But in closing, if we can help close that gap with education, let us know what we can do. WCHA, as you know, is very willing to step up. TDA.
The only other thing that's popped up as of late is because there's been kind of this pent up amount of projects that need to be completed, and the TPC has been shut down basically for the last 8 years. There are questions about capacity, because I think the legislature is kind of smart enough to know, okay, if you make these changes, if you put this revenue into the revenue stream, and you're talking about townships and you're talking about counties and those local aids, what's the actual capacity for road building right now? How many corporations could handle the projects, and how quickly would it have to be done? Because there is some concern about that. So
Brian's willing to try to test it out though, aren't you?
Yeah.
I mean, we're trying to get that to line out.
Even maintenance dollars, I recognize the big projects take a lot of resources, but at the local level, just the pulverize and repave to trying to preserve what we have would be a big step in the right direction. Today, we have a 540-mile county highway system. On a 25-year life cycle for asphalt pavements, we should do 22 miles of pavement a year. This year we're doing 8. We're not able to hurt, and that's how this is sliding to the left. If we could just get maintenance money, short-term, well, not short-term, but 20-year term repairs to these local roads would be a big step in the right direction, short of the massive majors. Anything you can get for us short term to freeze where we are